1975. The year disco conquered America, when one song could make you a millionaire overnight and destroy your career just as fast. What if I told you that some of the most talented bands in music history hit their absolute peak that year, only to vanish into obscurity? Today, we're uncovering the tragic stories of 10 legendary bands that reached the top of the mountain in 1975, then disappeared forever. These aren't your typical one-hit wonders. These were genuinely talented musicians who created timeless music that influenced generations of artists. Their stories reveal the harsh realities of the music industry and remind us that talent alone isn't enough to guarantee lasting success. Band number 1, The Faces.
Let's start with The Faces, the English rock band featuring Rod Stewart and Ronnie Wood. By 1975, they were among the world's top grossing live acts, with their hit Stay With Me becoming a rock anthem that's still played today.
But success destroyed them. Stewart's solo career exploded with Maggie May, making him bigger than the band. Meanwhile, the Rolling Stones were courting Wood to replace Mick Taylor. The band started being billed as Rod Stewart and the Faces, which infuriated the other members. Stewart later wrote, "We were young and foolish, and nobody bothered with the details because we were all rich beyond our dreams." On December 18, 1975, he officially announced his departure at a London press conference. Wood joined the Stones, and one of the world's biggest rock bands simply ceased to exist. Band number 2, Average White Band. From Scotland came the Average White Band, 6 white musicians who created authentic funk music that earned respect from James Brown himself. Their instrumental Pick Up the Pieces hit number 1 in February 1975, knocking Linda Ronstadt off the top and selling over 1 million copies. But tragedy struck at their peak. At a September 1974 Hollywood party celebrating their success, drummer Robbie McIntosh was sold cocaine spiked with strychnine, a deadly poison. Bassist Alan Gorey also sampled it and nearly died, only surviving because Cher kept him awake until help arrived. McIntosh was found dead in his motel room the next day. They recruited Steve Ferrone as drummer and scored one more top 10 hit with Cut the Cake, but the magic was gone. Without McIntosh's driving rhythms, they slowly declined and disbanded in 1982. A senseless tragedy cut short what could have been one of the defining funk bands of the decade. Band number 3, Dwight Twilley Band. From Tulsa came a power pop duo destined for stardom. Dwight Twilley and Phil Seymour created infectious music, bridging the Beatles and Tom Petty. Their debut, I'm on Fire, recorded in one night at church studio, hit number 16 in 1975 with zero promotion. Critics called them the next big thing. Then disaster struck. Their label Shelter Records collapsed mid-lawsuit between owners Denny Cordell and Leon Russell, just as their hit was climbing the charts. Their completed album sat unreleased for 10 months while lawyers battled. When Sincerely finally appeared in 1976, all momentum was dead. It peaked at number 138. Their follow-up, Shark in the Dark, was shelved because executives thought it was too similar to Jaws. Phil Seymour left in frustration in 1978, dying of lymphoma in 1993 at just 41. Corporate incompetence destroyed what should have been a great power pop success story. Band number 4, Big Star. No band better exemplifies music industry cruelty than Big Star. This Memphis power pop band created what are now considered some of rock's greatest albums, yet were complete commercial failures during their existence. Alex Chilton, former Box Tops frontman who sang the number 1 hit, The Letter, teamed with gifted songwriter Chris Bell in 1971. Their debut number 1 record earned rave Rolling Stone reviews with perfect pop songs like 13 and In the Street. Critics called them one of the leading new American bands. But distribution killed them. Their label Ardent was distributed through struggling Stax Records, which couldn't get albums into stores. Despite glowing reviews, you literally couldn't buy their music. The failure devastated Bell, who left in depression. Their second album, Radio City, suffered the same fate. By 1975, they'd essentially given up. Bell died in a car accident in 1978 at 27, never knowing his music would influence REM and the Replacements. Incredible talent destroyed by an industry that couldn't recognize genius. Band number 5, Van McCoy and the Soul City Symphony. Van McCoy was never supposed to be a star. He was a behind-the-scenes guy, a producer, arranger, and songwriter who had worked with everyone from Aretha Franklin to Gladys Knight. By 1975, he had over 700 songs to his credit and was one of the most respected figures in soul music. But everything changed with 1 hour of leftover studio time. McCoy was finishing up an album called Disco Baby when his partner Charles Kipps came back from a nightclub called Adam's Apple in Manhattan. Kipps was excited about a new dance he'd seen called The Hustle and dragged 2 dancers back to the studio at midnight to show McCoy. McCoy was fascinated. After years of dances where people did their own thing, here was something where people danced together again. It reminded him of ballroom dancing. With just an hour of studio time left, he wrote and recorded The Hustle as a throwaway track for the album. The song exploded beyond anyone's wildest expectations. Released in 1975, The Hustle shot to number 1 on both the pop and R&B charts, selling over 10 million copies worldwide. It sparked a dance craze that spread across the globe and won McCoy a Grammy Award for Best Pop Instrumental Performance. But McCoy was uncomfortable with his new role as a disco star. He was a serious musician who had spent decades building his reputation as a producer and songwriter. Being labeled as a disco hitmaker felt limiting and superficial to him. He tried to capitalize on the success with follow-up albums like The Disco Kid and The Real McCoy, but none came close to matching The Hustle. As the disco backlash began in the late 1970s, McCoy found himself typecast as a one-hit wonder, despite his extensive catalog of work. The stress of sudden fame and the pressure to repeat his success took a toll on his health. On July 6, 1979, Van McCoy died of a massive heart attack at his home in New Jersey. He was just 39 years old, exactly 6 months shy of his 40th birthday. 1 hour of studio time had made him famous, but it also trapped him in a box he could never escape. Band number 6. Wild Cherry. Play that funky music. Even today, those opening guitar riffs are instantly recognizable, but the story behind Wild Cherry is one of the most unusual in rock history. This was a band that literally died and came back to life for one perfect moment in 1975. Wild Cherry was originally a hard rock band from Ohio, led by Rob Parisi. They had been struggling for years, releasing unsuccessful singles and watching their dreams slip away. By 1975, they were so discouraged that they officially broke up. The members went their separate ways, convinced their musical careers were over. But fate intervened at a Cleveland nightclub. The story goes that a black audience member shouted at the white rock band to play that funky music instead of their usual hard rock fare. That comment stuck with Parisi, and he decided to reform Wild Cherry with a completely different sound, a funk rock fusion that would later be called the first real disco rock crossover hit. They recorded Play That Funky Music in 1976, and it became a phenomenon. The song shot to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and went platinum. It was everything their earlier rock songs weren't: infectious, danceable, and perfectly timed for the disco era. But success was short-lived. Wild Cherry could never recreate the magic of their one massive hit. They released several follow-up albums, but none achieved significant commercial success. The band members struggled with the pressure of being one-hit wonders and the challenge of following up a perfect song. Internal tensions and creative differences led to lineup changes, and eventually the band's permanent dissolution in 1979. Rob Parisi later admitted that they had tried too hard to recreate Play That Funky Music instead of evolving their sound naturally. The irony is that Wild Cherry's one hit was so perfectly crafted and timed that it overshadowed everything else they did. They proved that sometimes one perfect song is both a blessing and a curse. It can make you famous, but it can also define and limit you forever. Band number 7, Minnie Riperton. Minnie Riperton possessed one of the most extraordinary voices in music history. Her 5-octave range and ability to hit notes in the whistle register made her a technical marvel. When Lovin' You reached number 1 in April 1975, it seemed like the beginning of a long and successful career for this incredibly gifted artist. Lovin' You was a deceptively simple song, basically a love letter to her husband and infant daughter Maya, who would later become comedian and actress Maya Rudolph. The song featured Minnie's ethereal vocals floating over a minimalist arrangement, showcasing her incredible range and control. Radio programmers and audiences were mesmerized by her voice. But Riperton's career was tragically cut short by circumstances beyond anyone's control. In 1976, just a year after her biggest hit, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. She was only 31 years old and at the peak of her vocal powers. Rather than retreat from the public eye, Ripperton made the courageous decision to become an advocate for cancer awareness and early detection. She continued performing and recording while undergoing treatment, using her platform to educate other women about the disease. Her bravery in the face of terminal illness was inspiring, but it also meant her musical career became secondary to her role as a health advocate. While she released several more albums, none achieved the commercial success of Lovin' You. The music industry moved on, always hungry for the next new thing. Minnie Riperton died on July 12, 1979, at just 31 years old. Her daughter Maya was only 6 years old at the time. Riperton's death robbed the world of one of its most gifted vocalists and left behind the haunting question of what she might have achieved with more time. Her legacy lives on through her music and through Maya Rudolph's successful career in comedy and entertainment. But Lovin' You remains both a beautiful monument to her talent and a reminder of how fragile and precious artistic genius can be. Band number 8, Pilot. From Scotland came Pilot, a soft rock band that captured the magic of mid-70s pop with their infectious hit, Magic. The song reached number 5 in the US and became a staple of AM radio, with its instantly memorable chorus and polished production that epitomized the sound of 1975. Pilot was formed by 3 young Scottish musicians, who were initially hired as substitute players for the Bay City Rollers. But they were ambitious and talented enough to want their own success rather than living in another band's shadow. They wrote Magic for their debut album from the album of the same name, a cheeky title that showed their sense of humor. The song was perfectly crafted for radio, upbeat, melodic, and just over 3 minutes long. It had everything that programmers were looking for in 1975: tight harmonies, a catchy hook, and production that sounded great on both AM and FM radio. Magic seemed to promise a bright future for the band, but the music industry was changing rapidly in the mid-70s. The rise of album-oriented rock on FM radio and the growing popularity of disco were squeezing out the kind of pop rock that Pilot specialized in. Radio programmers were looking for either harder rock or danceable disco, leaving little room for melodic pop bands. Pilot's follow-up singles failed to chart significantly in the US, though they continued to have modest success in the UK. The band struggled to adapt to changing musical tastes and found themselves typecast as a bubblegum act, which limited their artistic credibility. Internal tensions arose as the members disagreed about the band's musical direction. Some wanted to pursue a harder rock sound to stay relevant, while others preferred to stick with the melodic pop style that had brought them success. These creative differences led to lineup changes, and eventually the band's dissolution by 1977. The tragedy of Pilot is that they were genuinely talented musicians who created perfect pop songs, but they were caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. Magic remains a classic of 70s pop, but it also serves as a reminder of how quickly the music industry can change and leave talented artists behind. Band number 9, Nazareth. Scottish hard rock band Nazareth had been grinding it out for years before their version of Love Hurts became a massive hit in 1975. Originally an Everly Brothers song from 1960, Nazareth's heavier, more emotional version transformed it into something completely different, a heart-wrenching power ballad that showcased both their musicianship and their ability to reinterpret classic songs. The band had been releasing albums since 1971, building a loyal following with their blend of hard rock and blues. But it was their cover of Love Hurts that broke them into the mainstream, reaching the top 10 in multiple countries and becoming their signature song. What made Nazareth's version special was how they stripped away the original's country pop sweetness and replaced it with raw emotion and heavy guitars. Lead singer Dan McCafferty's gravelly voice gave the lyrics a weight and authenticity that resonated with audiences who were dealing with the aftermath of the idealistic 1960s. But Nazareth faced the classic problem of being defined by their one big hit. Despite releasing numerous albums and maintaining a devoted fan base, they could never escape the shadow of Love Hurts. Radio stations wanted them to play it at every concert, and record labels pressured them to write more songs in the same style. The band's attempts to evolve musically were often met with resistance from fans who just wanted more of the same. This creative tension led to frustration within the group and a gradual decline in their commercial relevance as musical tastes shifted away from the kind of heavy blues rock they specialized in. While Nazareth continued performing and recording for decades, they never again achieved the mainstream success of Love Hurts. They became a perfect example of how one massive hit can both make and limit a band's career, creating expectations that are impossible to meet or exceed. Band number 10, Hamilton, Joe Frank and Reynolds. Our final entry is Hamilton, Joe Frank and Reynolds, a soft rock trio whose Fallen in Love became a #1 hit in 1975. The song epitomized the smooth, romantic pop that dominated mid-70s radio, with lush harmonies and polished production that made it perfect for the emerging adult contemporary format. The band had actually scored an earlier hit in 1971 with Don't Pull Your Love, so they weren't exactly newcomers. But Fallen in Love was their commercial peak, a song that seemed tailor-made for the romantic escapism that audiences craved in the mid-70s. However, the band faced internal conflicts about their musical direction. Some members wanted to pursue a more rock-oriented sound, while others preferred to stick with the soft rock formula that had brought them success. These creative differences led to lineup changes that disrupted the chemistry that had made their hits possible. The music industry was also changing rapidly around them. The rise of disco and punk rock was making their style of soft rock seem dated and irrelevant to younger audiences. Meanwhile, the emergence of singer-songwriters like James Taylor and Jackson Browne offered a more authentic alternative to their polished pop sound. By the late 1970s, Hamilton, Joe Frank, and Reynolds had effectively disbanded, unable to adapt to the changing musical landscape. They remain a footnote in music history, remembered primarily for two perfectly crafted pop hits that captured a specific moment in time, but couldn't sustain a lasting career. These 10 bands remind us that success in the music industry is often as much about timing, luck, and circumstances as it is about talent. Each of these groups created music that still resonates today, songs that are played at weddings, featured in movies, and covered by new generations of artists. Their stories reveal the harsh realities behind the glamour of the music business, the label politics, the distribution problems, the personal tragedies, and the simple bad luck that can destroy even the most promising careers. But they also show us the enduring power of great music to transcend its original context and continue moving people decades later. 1975 was both a peak and a turning point for these artists, a moment when everything seemed possible before reality set in. Their music survives as a testament to their talent and a reminder that sometimes the greatest artists are the ones who burned brightest and briefest. What other legendary bands from music history do you think deserved better? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into music history's most fascinating stories.